I just want to say, Rob and I go back a long way and have been through many, many iterations of many things
That's for
together.
sure.
And I just think this is one of the most wonderful things that Rob has come up with. And he's come up with a lot of them. So I'm just thrilled to be here. And I think this
is the way.
institute offers so much promise. I think the kind of scholarship that I have heard today is a new kind of scholarship. There's a generational difference here that I see, and even for those who are in my generation, an evolution of thinking, and it's very exciting to hear and to see the way we are progressing. All right. I came to read some poetry that I translated with Shaheen Mozoon by second volume of Prison Poems by Mahvash Sabet. And I think all of you know who Mahvash Sabet is, so I don't know if I should say more, although there may be some people who don't know too many details. But Mahvash Sabet was a teacher and school principal for the BIHE, the very institution that I teach in, and was arrested in 2008 and jailed for 2.5 years without a proper hearing, finally convicted and imprisoned in 2010 with fellow members of the Iran for 20 years imprisonment. And as I think most of you know, she was able to be released from prison after 10 years and did not have to serve that 20-year prison sentence, but has now returned to prison along with her cohort, Fariba Kamalabad. And while Mahvash Sabet was in prison, she wrote a number of poems. The prison poems, the first volume of her prison poems was published by George Ronald. This second volume, several years ago, this second volume also published by George Ronald. And in 2017, the first prison poems published in 2013. In 2017, she was awarded the Pen Pinter Writer of Courage Prize, which was conferred by Michael Longley, an Irish poet who has since passed away, who felt that Mahvash was the worthiest person, the worthiest poet he could think of to share this award with him because of her incredible journey as a person and as a poet. He wrote of her, Mahvash is at heart a lyrical poet who sings the beauty of the world. Her imagination is rhapsodic. Her poems want to soar. I rejoice that she has been released from prison. This was after her first release. Her incarceration by the Iranian authorities was a sin against the light. The power of dictators to silence and imprison writers continues to put all heaven in a rage. So, you ready? Yes, I'm ready. Mahvash herself and Fariba Kamalabadi confirms this, her cohort, because these two women are in prison together all these years, and many of the poems in the first volume are about Fariba. I found some of those poems the most touching, Paul. And
where'd it go?
Mahvash holds up her experience as an example of a kind of oppression that is widespread. Many of my students have been arrested or in prison. One of my students, Hannah Hashemi, was in prison before she could write the last essay for my course. And so this is not an uncommon experience, although to be in prison that long, I think is rare. But as Fariba Kamalabadi said, there is not a single family in Iran that has not been touched by this suffering and injustice. So when I read to you Mahvash's poems, these are poems of witness, a testimony to an experience that is widespread in Iran amongst the Baha'is of oppression, persecution, suffering. And the things I've learned are shocking and surprising to me, that Baha'is aren't allowed to work in the food industry, for example, because they're considered unclean. They're not allowed to drink out of the same drinking fountains as others. So there's echoes of the Deep South before civil rights in this kind of persecution. It's a very deep kind of persecution.
Okay.
So I am a writer, and I was looking for ways to engage in the arts from a spiritual perspective. At the same time, I was teaching the BIHE, and I was looking for material all the time, good writing. And I found that my students were writing the most fascinating essays. And so I began to publish them, really a record of our times in Iran in the journal. And I began to devote issues of the journal to their essays, to their writings. Their stories are, some are sad, tragic, some happy, about transcendence, about travel, about pilgrimage. One of my students wrote an essay on reading Anne Frank in Isfahan and comparing herself to Anne Frank. This piece got picked up by by Brilliant Star. And another student wrote a lighthearted piece about riding a bicycle in the city of Isfahan. Women are not allowed to ride bicycles, but she did it anyway. And they celebrated the incredible feeling of freedom she had riding this bicycle. That essay was also picked up by Brilliant Star. And other pieces, which are simply, essays by undergraduate students, have given us this amazing glimpse into the life of youth in this land right now, really a precious piece of history. So I decided to share some of these essays, and I really hope that you will take a look. It's Elixir Journal, elixir-journal.org. It's an online journal. You can subscribe if you want. And I want to read to you, before we begin, an essay that my students wrote. Yes, here it is. It was an assignment I gave in which I asked a student to write a letter to your child of the future. This is an essay assignment. And this is what one of my students wrote, just to give you the flavor of the experience of youth in Iran right now. It's called A Small Light in a Dark Room. My dearest child, as I write this, I am in my early 20s. In many other countries around the world, young people my age can study subjects of their choice in universities, feel safe and secure, and live in peace. They can wear anything they like, speak freely about their beliefs, and enjoy the freedom to go where they please. I hope that when you read this letter, you are in the same situation. I hope you and your generation have the freedom I do not have, for my experience of life is far from what I hope for you. As a Baha'i living in Iran, I do not have any civil rights and must endure disrespectful treatment, sometimes daily. This may be difficult for you and some others around the world to understand. You cannot feel the pain we experience every day. Every morning we wake up hearing news of Baha'is arrested in different cities in Iran, looting of Baha'i properties and closing of shops. On July 19th, 2022, Hanan Hashemi, that's my student who was arrested, and one of my best friends was arrested. On July 31st, 2022, my uncle's home and property were looted. In different cities of Iran, more than 80 Baha'is were attacked, arrested, arraigned, or jailed in June and July of this year. Sometimes I tell myself, this is the end. I cannot go on anymore. But then I think about the reasons we Baha'is in Iran are so bravely enduring all these things. The Baha'i faith has come to bring peace and unity to the world, and it is our job to help reach this goal. My child, I believe I am living in a very important period of history. I believe all the Baha'is who are living in Iran and tolerating these terrible conditions are playing a crucial role in building a better future. My professor, Dr. Hutchison, once said, "Your difficulties are history." Her words remind me of a movie named Freedom Riders, based on a true story about experiences of real people, disadvantaged teenagers who learn to transform their lives by writing their stories and rewriting their futures. There is a moment in the dialogue in this movie that is so meaningful to me. In the following scene, Meet Geese is explaining how she helped and sheltered Anne Frank and her family. Marcus, one of the freedom writers, stands up and comes forward. Marcus, I've never heard of a hero before, but you are my hero. Meet Geese, oh no, young man, I'm not a hero. I did what I had to do because it was the right thing to do, that is all. But even an ordinary person can, within their own small way, turn on a light in a dark room. I have read your letters, and your teacher has been telling me many things about your experiences. You are the heroes. In my eyes, Meet Geese, Anne Frank, and the Freedom Riders, my friend Hannon, and anyone in the world who turns on a small light in a dark room is a hero. All the Baha'is in Iran are heroes, for they are sacrificing their property, time, and energy. And we, the Baha'i youth in Iran, are sacrificing the best days of our lives and years for a purpose. We are giving up the days of our youth because we hope to build a brighter future, not only for ourselves, but for future generations. I am doing this for you, my child. We know the gloom of night is followed by the brightness of day, and autumn dust is vanished, washed away by the showers of spring. We believe what Abdu'l-Baha has written about the future of our country. Iran shall become a focal center of divine splendors. Her darksome soil will become luminous, and her land will shine resplendent. And so I believe I will meet you, my child, in better days. Love forever, Mom. So you can see why I want to share these accounts, because they provide us with a glimpse into the minds, the hearts, the souls, and the struggles of these remarkable youth who are studying the BHE, like Egon was until recently. And the kind of transcendence that they achieve, over their circumstances is really hard for us to grasp. And this is one of the issues, and I did have some other issues that I wanted to show you, and you can look them up yourself. A couple of and I tell you all this because Mahvash's poetry is part of a larger story, and it's very important that we think about the whole story and all those who are involved.
Do you want to show another one now?
Yeah, show the 15.
Okay.
We have one of the students created a comic called Rui and Riaz,
Going here.
and it's about
Page down.
the trials and tribulations of youth in Iran. And there was one that was created during the uprising, and the student was dealing with interrogating the whole question of hijab, which was very interesting. And we had an interview with the painter created this painting of the 7 members of the NSA that were martyred in 1980, was it
79.
79? That's right, 1979. And he's still in Iran, and we had this wonderful interview with him about the creation of this painting and the history around it. This very well-known painting. And anyway, I invite you to take a look, because I think that it's important for us not to forget about them. And I know we all think about them, but I think it's important for us to know them, to know who they are, what they're dealing with, what their struggles are. And that's a kind of solidarity, is for us to talk about them and to share their stories with others, so that, the more consciousness we raise about this issue, the better it is for them, because that action can be taken, the more consciousness is raised, the more pressure on those who can make a difference. So I want to turn now to Mahvash Sabet herself and the poems. And the story of this book is a remarkable and surprising one to me, myself. I never intended to translate these poems. I never intended to translate any poems, let alone this very important body of poems that tells us so much about what it is like to undergo this kind of oppression in Iran right now. But through a series of circumstances, I came to work with my co-translator, Shaheen Mozoon, who is a native Persian speaker. And I, of course, literal translation need to be recast, reimagined as poetry. And that was my part in the process. So we tried to remain as faithful as we could. And sometimes we had to cut back a little because, as those of you who know Persian, it's a much bigger language than English, which is very economical. So we had to do a little bit of compression, but faithful as possible to the poems. And we started working with Mahvash in this translation, and we only had one meeting, and then the night before our second meeting, she was arrested again. So we went on by ourselves, and we didn't know what was going to happen. We decided to complete the volume, and in the end, it was published. And one of the most remarkable things that happened was that Narges Mohammadi, and this was something different people were suggested to as writers of the introduction. And it occurred to me that we should ask someone who really knew what this experience was like. And I had seen on Facebook many posts in which Mahvash had mentioned Narges and Narges had mentioned Mahvash. And I thought, well, why don't we try to get an introduction from Narges Mohammadi, who's a Nobel laureate for peace and very well-known activist in women's rights in Iran and beyond. And lo and behold, we were able to get that introduction out of the prison. I have no idea how it happened, but I did get it in my email in Persian, and then we translated it. And so we have this wonderful, moving account of what the experience that they're sharing together, because they're in the same ward, I believe, of the prison, of Evin prison. And I just want to share with you some of the words of Narges Mohammadi about this volume and about the experience that is recorded in this volume. And I should say that, that these poems are in the genre of prison literature, but they're a reimagining of this genre because in these poems, there is a great deal of transcendence, which is very surprising given the experience. And that is what makes, for me anyway, this volume so incredibly special, is that it's a record of prison life, but it's not like other records of prison life. There's this transcendence that comes through spiritual life, through faith. And Narges Mohammadi mentions that in the introduction. She says, from within the stark confines of solitary confinement, Mahvash Sabet has conjured, I can't even use the verb right in this sentence, the world of her prison cell. As those who've experienced it well know, solitary confinement transforms ordinary life into an abyss of absence, a complete void, a realm in which human will is tested to its breaking point. Within these confines, the incarcerated poet, though yearning to write, can find no pen or paper. Though she wishes to read, she can find no book. Though she may long to witness the beauty of nature, she sees only a wall, just centimeters from her face, a constant reminder, an image that presses itself into her mind, even when she closes her eyes, a relentless oppressor whose presence eventually renders distance meaningless. For someone in solitary confinement, the desire for human connection is a yearning that cannot be fulfilled. Solitude is the only companion. Barred from the outside world with not so much as a doorknob to offer hope of release, the prisoner watches the door merge with the walls of the prison cell. Conditions in solitary confinement are intended to dehumanize a prisoner. The goal of such confinement is to create a space of profound isolation. And she goes on to talk about white torture. And Narges Mohammadi recently did a book on white torture, in which Mahvash Sabet has a piece. And this is the part of the introduction by Narges Mohammadi that I thought is so powerful. Without doubt, Mahvash Sabet stands as a beacon to all who must endure unjust detention. And it is with certainty I now say that it is her belief that bestows upon Mahvash the strength to meet persecution with words of peace, to find light in the midst of dark prison cell, and to offer love in a place rife with suffocation and hatred, and to embody compassion in the midst of the most inhumane conditions imaginable. The value of these literary poems, or these poems, their literary merit, is amplified by their place of origin. And as I say in my own preface, as I write, there's no more consequential body of poetry than one that is produced within the confines of a prison cell. And I don't think that statement needs any gloss. Mahvash released words that were previously shackled, and she has made sure these words are not lost to oblivion. Of the threats, humiliation, insults she's had to endure, she has made dark pages on which her mind can set down words of resistance to affirm life. From the heart of stillness, her poems emerge evidence of resilience in a world in which every moment feels like an eternity. So it's interesting, resilience and resistance, transcendence and resistance. So a different genre of prison poem. Her work, crafted within the bleak corners of despotism, emerges as a unique record of the indomitability of the human spirit. With these verses, a sanctuary of compassion is made, and light is brought forth out of the darkness of a prison cell. So this introduction was, such a incredibly powerful and fitting frame for these poems. It really helps us to understand the nature of this experience. And now we'll actually turn to the poems themselves. And it's interesting because Egon mentioned Dr. Davoudi, and in fact, Mahvash has written a poem to Mrs. Davoudi in this book called The Companion. So I hope that I'll have a chance to read that later. And I'm going to start with a poem called Ivy. And this poem was interesting to me. And this is one of the poems that we worked on with Mahvash herself and over Zoom. And at first I didn't understand fully what this poem was about until she clarified it. And I was very shocked to discover it's about executions. So, Ivy. We are like ivy, wrapping our tender fronds around coils of barbed wire. Each morning we offer a single blossom to the hangman's noose. Each morning we press a flower on the pages of history. And one of the features of prison life, having lived with this translation for a couple of years, I really began to notice the heaviness of some of these themes. And one of the heaviest themes that I experienced in my journey with this material was boredom. Just the lack of stimulation, the sameness. And this poem, 2720 is the name of is the title of the poem. 2,720 times the sun has risen. 2,720 times the sun has set. And every morning I step out of my dark corner to grasp the light. Listen for the sound of my own heart as it whispers prayers. feel my arm stretching toward God. 2,720 times, the difference between my yesterday and today is no more than half a verse at the tip of my pen. My point of departure and my destination the same. So it is I die with the living and live with the dead, all my gestures confined to this strange and foreign land where I have lived so long, this small loveless place, this enclosed space, this land forever fenced. And there's a lot of poems in this spirit in the volume. Poem about a prison guard, poem about white torture. And I'm always a bit reluctant to read too many of these poems. They're very, very heavy, and that's not the point of the volume. The volume is a record of what has happened in the prison, but it's also a testimony to transcendence. So I want to move on to, not yet quite to the poems about spiritual transcendence, but to the second theme that I really noted in this volume, and that is, other than boredom in the sense of tedium, the lack of change, the lack of stimulation, is yearning. This spirit of yearning really permeates so many of the poems. And they're very touching, these poems, because we think this is happening to a real person, who has, this is not fiction. This is someone who's really experiencing this in real life. And she has a husband and she has children and she's not seeing them. And it really brings home the reality of this prison experience of all these years, many, many years. This is called To See You. What dreams I have had, what nightmares too, trying to see you. I have turned the hourglass upside down 10,000 times. 1,000,000 times I took the little prince on my shoulders to see the sunrise, and 1,000,000 times he took me to see the sunset. I was coming to see you when a star fell into my lap and another touched my eyes. I was coming to see you when the gray roof took on a silver hue, when the snow turned silver, and now my hair too. All this as I was coming to see you. And some of the details become so large in this experience. This poem is called The Frame. This is about a picture frame. In this frame, I've captured your whole self, all of you, every inch, and the bright flares of your eyes. I've captured them too, like a secret unveiled in a poem or in the throbbing of a heart. Blood courses through my veins, a red flush. This shocking game destiny plays. Everyone can see you now. I have a frame. And she writes a poem about the feast and yearning for the feast. Such a noble occasion in the simple homes of friends, rooms filled with light, faces pure and radiant, such delicate meanings, those eternal words, passionate conversations on heavenly themes, and joyous music to celebrate efforts along the path to true prosperity. How I yearn for it. So the theme of yearning is, and there's a poem that we think was for her children, we're not quite sure, called Light of My Eyes. It's been a long time since I lifted the veil to look into your hearts, to taste the sweetness of your gaze. What a feast. All night I drink light from your eyes, sip the wine of your glances, bask in love's satin, sleep wrapped in the silk of your breath. I place my hand in the hand of your hearts. Touch tender saplings in groves of olives, figs, persimmons. In that place, love shines, light of my eyes. We'll go on to some of the poems for sanity that are written in that appear in this volume, because this is a situation that really tests your mind, and you can feel this. This comes through very powerfully in a few of the poems, and this one in particular, it's called Under. And sometimes in titling these poems, I found that the simpler the concept, the better. I mean, these are not really lyric poems, they're not songs, because the subject matter is such that you cannot consider them to be lyric poems. And it's hard to find titles sometimes for these poems, but this one seemed very clear to me. Under my pillow, a drum is beating. Under my pillow, a stream is flowing, and canaries drink sweet water from its light. I didn't know when that maple branch began to grow under my pillow, or when the woodpecker began to tap, tap, tap from dusk to dawn with its heavy beak against the dream of a tree. I remember someone fighting for sanity, how every morning she would open her eyes, beam rays of understanding in parallel lines, as she roamed among the flowers, pondered the heavens and their stars. Under my pillow, a drum is beating. Under my pillow, a river flows. And there I believe that she is talking about herself. So there's some subtlety, in point of view in these poems. And one poem that, if you get a chance to look at elixir-journal.org, you will find an essay by Mahvash Sabet called The Fountain and the Thirsty One, which is a really fascinating essay in which she gives an account of how she found her voice as a poet. And that happened to her in the prison. And she talks about her journey, and that all of those of you who are writers in the crowd will know this journey, the journey towards certitude, in your work, the journey towards belief in yourself as a writer, as a poet. And this journey for Mahvash really reached its culmination in the prison when it's a very moving essay, when she realized she had nothing to lose. And it didn't matter what kind of genre she wrote in, she should just write and express what was in her in the most spontaneous kind of way. And she talks about walking back and forth across the cell and reciting poems to herself. And it's really a very fascinating, very unusual way for someone to find their poetic voice under those kinds of circumstances. And this is a poem about that. And the sense that the words are given, these words, and that is of course always true in a sense. Those of us who are involved in creative work know that some things are given to us, through the power of the Holy Spirit. But there's also a making. There's what is given and then there's what is made. And Mahvash makes something of what is given. And these words were placed in my mouth by that master of every discourse, words not for anyone but me. He uttered them, then left for his fertile plains, his blooming valleys, so far from everyone, from the suffering world, from the world half dead and half alive. He placed these words in my mouth. Now they live within me, and this new voice speaks with my tongue, while his fire burns in my soul, swallows me whole. So we get this kind of really passionate, inspired voice in this poetry that really has this feeling. It was a sort of a tahare posture where, we feel that connection with the divine, and the poetry is coming from the divine, and the poetry is in celebration of the divine, regardless of circumstances. And those poems are really powerful. And then there's also these other kinds of poems about poetry in this volume. One is called Sad Children, because she's sending these poems out of the prison, however she can get them out. The first volume, second volume, not so much. But this poem, because she was out of prison, she was able to give this manuscript to us. These poems were originally published in Persian already, 2 other volumes in Persian. And but the first volume, and she writes about this, poems were ferreted out of the prison in pockets, on napkins, and there's all kinds of stories about how things get in and out of the prison. A couple of my students have written pieces about one of my students had an aunt who did a master's in public health by writing her textbooks on the inside of a white t-shirt, which she turned inside and studied while she was in the prison, if you can believe that. So there's all kinds of ways of getting words in and out of the prison, and you have to be very ingenious to do it, but it's not easy. Being a writer is hard enough, and when you don't know where your words are going, and you don't know if anyone's reading them or if they're published. And this is a poem about that. It's called Sad Children. Without sound, I recite my poem in my heart, and sometimes when no one is near, I recite it aloud in a brave voice, so the rhythms fill my ear. Each poem is a child of this prison, forever tied to its mother's heart. Right now, one is growing inside me. When it comes, a slight pain, and then all alone, I cradle it in my arms, run my fingers along its newborn face. At last, I must entrust it to someone. Let it go. No one can ever tell me where or how my children live, or if they're languishing from neglect. Such sad children, how they long for their mother, yearn for her tender caress. And another poem, and then I'll move to the poems of transcendence, because they're the really powerful ones that make this volume so special. 53. And this was cited in the synopsis for the Corinne True Center's description of this talk. It's my pen's gone. My pen's broken, and it's not in my hand. They took my voice as a spoil of oppression. Now, as I write, my tears like sound waves vibrate in the air. My fingers reach, my eyes cast furtive glances. My pen's gone. Still poems fall from the curls of my thoughts. My pen is vanished. Still poems are born with every breath. Rhythms will pour from the dark corner of my cage. I can pour love into the mold of poems, give it form. I can hide poems in the corner of my mind. So I'll finish with a few poems on this theme of spiritual transcendence. One is called, and this is one of my favorite poems, Again I Rose. I think this, if any poem in the book really encapsulates the prison experience, I think it's this poem. On a dusty day, filled with despair in the prison courtyard, all alone, I leaned on the walls, out of place, where noise and chaos moved as waves. And in the gap in the ground, I saw a growing thing. In the heart of darkness, a small green shoot, its leaves and blossoms so profuse. And I asked myself, what is left of me? Is there no trace of a sturdy root? Is there no hope for me to bear fruit? Then suddenly, A fire ignited in my heart, and I was filled with hope, strength, and will. Though I was tired and fallen on the dust, again I rose on my 2 feet. Just about getting up and going through the day, another day in prison, and not knowing when it will all end. About the resilience of that, the strength of that, the strength that is given to endure that. And the more I lived with these poems and the experience I described, the more I realized that this is not, someone doesn't do this by themselves. You know, this is not something you can do by yourself. As we're talking about interrogation and torture and all of those things that could easily send you over, you know, to relinquish faith and to give up your convictions, and yet to hold strong. I mean, it is really almost unthinkable. And a small son. And this is again a poem to the divine. You have set a small sun in my heart, and I am a flame. Open my chest and watch the flames rise from this speck of dust by night and by day. Will you share a lesson with me? You with a lifetime of stoking flames without reward? You serve the roses in my house, and I will tell you, they are deeply in love with you. We live searching, circling around you as you appear, vanish, then appear. We bask in your glow, searching forests, seas, mountains, and plains. We utter your name, sing praises, come alive in the heart of your flame. I beg you now, don't leave the heavens. Shine your light, show signs. Shine in the green fields, show your dark eye in the vernal pool. Let me draw a beam from your light. Let me feel the warmth of your hand. I am a speck of dust, a mote circling in your beams. I dance with joy as you guide me, draw me nearer. Why should I be so sad? You have hidden a small sun in my heart, and I am a flame. I dance to your tune. My steps become your steps as you show me how to love, how to shine. I have no regrets. The roses in my house are deeply in love with you. So we'll end with 3 brief poems. Luminous message is things that seem very ordinary to us gain such significance when you're in these circumstances. The moon, the stars, these are huge events. And this is a poem about the moon. The moon is drowning in its own light. A ray shines on a bird's wing and the bird leaps. How to describe a fragrance as vast and deep as the sea when it roars into infinity? Moon, stars, sun, I want you to know I appreciate your bright message, your lofty station, the fragrance of your words. I bask in your bright gaze, swim in this feeling of youth and boundless dreams. Okay, 2 more poems. It's a lot of poetry. And poetry is my work in my field, but I realize it's not everybody's. So maybe people have not quite as much patience for poetry as I do. Everywhere. You hide everywhere. Behind the drapes, the windows, and the picture frames, behind times past and present, behind patience and fortitude, rushing and stillness. You are the root and the stem, whatever grows. You come like not days and nights that do not end until I close my eyes and they pass away in a single breath. You have locked my heart and kept the key. Now I see you everywhere, hiding in plain sight. And this last poem that I will read, Footsteps, is truly, well, I think it's probably the very best poem in this volume. And there are many good poems in this volume, but this particular one is quite remarkable. It's for Tahari, and it's about a vision. And I think this, well, can you say a vision really happened? Yes, okay, yes, thank you, Tom. It was a vision, I believe that, I don't think she's just imagining this. I think she actually had the experience of this vision of Tahari coming to her cell, her footsteps outside the cell. So that is and Tahari, I think you all know, a Persian poem of the 19th century, very well known. Footsteps for Tahari. Your footsteps in the silence bring me joy. Casting off my dark veil, I stand tall. With each breath, I reach for you, search for you in all the nooks and crannies where my lost treasures lie hidden, unclaimed. You are an illumined word, my gift, a treasure. You lead me on my way, and when the earth quakes, your arms steady me. You are the one who heard the call. Who taught you to chant in reply? You have cast away the old bottle and the cup as well. You were a pearl within a shell. How did you free yourself? I hear your footsteps drawing nearer. To which ancient city do you call me? You who never met your beloved. How were you caught in his snare? You are alive, present in this cell, calling me to that distant goal. You, the lit candle of creation, spread before me a banquet of joy. If you, light of the eyes, pure one, should tell the tale of this lover, tell it with love's fervor. You who wear the golden crown have lifted the veil of darkness, broken all the bonds. A burning meteor, you have come to shatter the night. I ask you to look upon my dark days, stay always by my side.